heading up the track known as the Burma Road on the Kinrara estate. Still some autumn colours in the lower woods. This was Brew Dog's Lost Forest estate, but earlier this year they finally gave up on it and sold it to Oxygen Conservation, who hopefully will make a better job of looking after it and letting the woodland regenerate than Brew Dog did. I'm going to wander up into the hills, possibly all the way down the other side to the River Dulnane, camp for the night, come back via a different route and just have a look at what is happening currently on the estate, though I believe Oxygen Conservation haven't done anything yet, but are simply having a look at what they've bought. I'm now comfortably in camp, maybe a kilometre or so from the River Dulnane, but I've certainly crossed the hills and come down this side. The last hour and a half of the walk there was heavy rain, so I decided I would stop at the first decent place I found, and that's here. Now it has cleared quite a bit, there is a bright moon and the temperatures dropped to 5 degrees. We'll see what happens overnight, but I'm quite snug in here. I'm trying out a few things for the first time. My stove is a new tiny Alpkit alcohol stove, which is this little thing here, and it has a tiny clip together windshield spot support, and it comes with a pretty small mug, 400ml, but that's to the very brim, so realistically 300ml. It seems to work much like other meths alcohol stoves. It took quarter of an hour, 15 minutes to boil 200ml when there was no wind. It was a bit faster boiling 300ml when there was actually a breeze. It is, however, when this is full and you're sitting it, on top of the windshield like that, it's a bit top heavy because all the weight is up here, and on soft ground, which this is, it just tilt a bit, so I used a few tent pegs to hold it securely in place. I think it'll be fine for one night trips like this, when the weather's not too severe and you're not really doing any serious cooking. I mean, I've brought one of my favourite firepot meals, the vegan orzo bolognese, which is hydrating at the moment, and this requires 300ml of water, which I just boiled up in the little mug. I wouldn't like to try and cook anything in it or simmer anything for any length of time, but if all you're doing is boiling small amounts of water, it's fine. You could use a bigger pot or mug on it, but then the stability, I think, would be even worse. So I think it's best to keep it to small amounts of water and occasional use. But it is ultra light. I'll put the weight up there somewhere. And the other thing I'm trying out is the tent, which is a Highlander Refuge 1. As the name suggests, it's a solo tent. So far this is not much of a test, as there's virtually no wind at all and it's not raining, but we'll see how it gets on overnight, what it's like in the morning. Both of these, the stove and the tent, will be reviewed next year in the Great Outdoors magazine. But for now, I'm going to have my dinner, which I think is almost ready, and go on reading this excellent book, which is Mark Hines' Hiking the Yukon Quest, where he set out to hike in the snow the route of the dog sled race in the Yukon Territory of Canada and Alaska. And I'm finding it fascinating, partly because the Yukon section anyway, a lot of it is the same areas that I walked through one summer when I walked south-north through the Yukon Territory. So it's interesting to read another book about a solo adventure in the same place. Anyway, in the morning I'll see how the tent is, see what the stove's like for making the coffee, and also what the view's like. I pitched in the dark, so I have no clear idea of what it looks like round here, which I always find really interesting. Sometimes the morning's a surprise, sometimes it isn't. We'll see. It's 7:30 in the morning, just getting light. I'm having my first cup of coffee, and it's got really quite windy. The wind has shifted too, so it's coming in the door of the tent, so I've closed it. There's still an awful lot of condensation, but it's quite snug in here. The temperature is now already up to 10 degrees. Overnight though, it fell to 4 degrees, so slightly chilly, but not really for November. Anyway, when I've had my coffee, I shall have some oatcakes and cheese spread for breakfast, and then have a look and see what's happening outside. When I looked out earlier, it was cloudy, grey skies. I think there was some rain overnight, I'm not sure, but it's always wonderful to be out in the hills, and we will see what the day brings. The view from the tent. Moorland and clouds, and the clouds are moving very fast, so I think of my options for today. I'll be taking the slightly lower one and not going over any summits. I've no desire to be blown about more than necessary by the wind, but for the moment it's time for another cup of coffee and the rest of breakfast before I venture outside and see what the world is like out there. This is a walk round my camp just before I pack everything up. It is very, very windy, as you can see from the tent, which is flapping a fair bit. though it's not too noisy compared with some. It doesn't crackle and snap. Just down there with an old bridge taking the Burma Road across it. You can see the Burma Road over there. In the cloud is Gyarkar Moor, which I don't think I'll be going up today. And around the other side of the tent. Almost finished packing, bound to take the tent down, and just had a burst of very heavy rain. You can see some of it there sitting on the tent, and this had me scrabbling round to get into my waterproofs. Well, the faint path became fainter and disappeared into boggy terrain, and at the same time it started raining heavily, and I ended up following deer tracks, bits of mud through the bogs all the way back to the Burma Road in strong wind and rain. And it's only now that I'm well down the Burma Road and getting back into the woods again that the rain has eased off, though it's still light, and there's still occasional gusts of wind and lots of clouds over the hills. So a wet walk it has turned out to be, but I think fairly soon I can probably put my hood down, maybe even risk taking my over-trousers off. Anyway, this is probably all for this little video. A bit wetter than I hoped this overnight trip would be, but interesting all the same, and I hope you've enjoyed it.